Great. Hi. Good evening, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to have you here for our first ever Future Proofing Hong Kong Pillars event. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to be running this with four very talented and esteemed leaders in their industries, providing different perspectives. And I hope all of you can hear us. I hope all of you can hear us loud and clear. Format for tonight's event is to have a very engaging conversation with these four leaders today for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes. And then I would love to have at any point, any of you who are out there in the audience, give us questions through the chat function. If there are some pertinent questions, then I'll bring it directly in the actual panel piece. And if there are questions that are more suitable for our Q&A section, that will last for about 20 minutes, and then we should wrap up by 8:15. So to get started, maybe just a quick introduction from our four panelists. Sahar, could I please get you to get started?
Sure. Pleasure to be here. So I guess by introduction, I am a HR professional, HR leader that started off my career as a corporate banker, reinvented myself in HR, and that basically gave me an opportunity to cut across 5 industries. So I've worked in banking, insurance, consumer goods with McDonald's, buy side, and now in consulting. I've also had previously set up my own company to do HR coaching and consulting. But the thread of my career has always been helping businesses and leaders grow, change, and transform. And that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thanks, Sahar. How about yourself, Manesh?
So I've been in the sourcing B2B trade industry for the last 20-something years. Worked in India, in US, New York, Los Angeles, Arizona, then in Shanghai, then in Taipei and Hong Kong. So last 20 years I've been on the road, and my previous role was heading all the international operations of global sources, which helps buyers connect to suppliers. I left that end of last year to start a company, BuyHive. The buyhive.com is the platform. And basically we are providing one of the pillars of Hong Kong, which is sourcing. We're making it easy to source for people by using freelance sourcing professionals that are available on the ground in Hong Kong. We provide virtual sourcing solutions. We provide virtual sourcing at trade shows, and we also provide turnkey sourcing solutions. Right now, we've been super busy for the last couple of months providing PPEs to the world, and we have shipped about 25 million, and we are in pipeline with 15 more million US dollars worth of PPEs. So we're growing and looking to grow much faster, and we are only 6 people.
Fantastic. Exciting days. Cam.
Hi, I'm Cam. Before I became a lawyer, I was a software engineer and project manager over 15 years, working in the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Malaysia. The work in IT was across different industries, from government utilities to financial organizations. About 15 years ago, I decided to embark on a legal career. And since then, I've been working for mostly in corporate and commercial work for listed companies, doing a lot of M&As and a lot of debt and equity financing and so forth. And I'm also a member of the Innotech Committee for the Law Society of Hong Kong, where we're trying to hand carry the legal system in Hong Kong, the organization, to the future as soon as possible. So that's bulk of our work for Law Society here, which is quite interesting.
Fantastic. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And Horace.
Hello, everybody. This is Horace Leung from Hong Kong Productivity Council. Basically, we work here in Hong Kong that help different entities, enterprise to improve their practice or organization in terms of productivity. So we help the companies to make use of latest technology to bring in with them the digital transformation. So for tonight, we will have the topic supply chain and in AI or data analytic applications. We'll share different views with all the participants here today, and we welcome any questions, or we can share among our experience so that we hope that Hong Kong will, or all around the world, will improve their productivity in terms of bringing the digital transformation. Okay.
Fantastic. Great. And just for all of you out there, my name is Levine Himlani. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Accelerate. We're a Hong Kong-based company that focuses on future of work and workforce development to try and help Hong Kong reinvent itself and also acquire new skills in artificial intelligence, in software engineering, in blockchain, in fintech, and in robotics process automation. We've trained about 4,000 people with the future of work in the last 3 years, and we're on track to keep trying to reinvest in more and more young people in Hong Kong, as well as enterprises, as well as government units to acquire these skills. So it's my absolute pleasure and honor to have 4 panelists here. And the format for tonight is to spend the first 20 minutes of our chat focusing on the problems and go dive deeper beyond the virus and beyond the general instability politically as to why Hong Kong and most enterprises are struggling. After that, we'll spend some time talking about solutions, especially from different perspectives, both the HR perspective, the CEO perspective, as well as from external and internal government units. And finally, talk about action points, for a lot of the people in the audience to try and learn from this and to share everything that can help Hong Kong become a great city again. So to get started, a quick question to you all. Beyond the virus, beyond the sort of political instability, these are the sort of surface level obvious reasons that we're seeing a lot of decline in Hong Kong's 4 pillars. What do you think are some of the other challenges that are more innate to Hong Kong in its inability or its in struggles to try and capture its digital transformation potential? Anyone can get started.
Let me give it a try. Just from what we have seen in the last few months, and maybe Levine, you can help us with this, where we are seeing the problems, right? So the cost of development in Hong Kong for the digitalization and the availability of good talent in that space is relatively limited when you see the cost of doing that and finding right people. You are doing a good job in trying to churn out more and more, training more and more people with those skill sets, especially when we talk about machine learning, AI, and coding. And it's very, very hard to find that quality stuff. And when I say very, very hard, I'm not criticizing as much, but see today in the virtual world, I have an option to go to India, I have an option to go to Thailand, I have an option to go to Philippines, I have an option to go to China. Hong Kong cannot compete unless until we have far more people with those skill sets available, and it becomes competitive, and the ethic levels of that audience becomes more like it is in the other markets. So that's a challenge that Hong Kong will always face, and something that has to be taken care of. Maybe HKPC has a solution for that.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree that recently there would be a lot of challenge for Hong Kong, so that we do the digital transformation is a little bit slower than what we expected in the past. And one of the reasons we observe is we find that most of us, when we talk about digital transformation, not many people would really know about what step they could take. But some of them may think or may say that, okay, when we go a step towards digital transformation, is it what we mean by using a lot of investment to purchase or procure the most expensive equipment to help us to do the digital transformation? Or some people will think, shall we acquire a company that is doing digital transformation? It means that we are going through the digital transformation. What we observe it would be we should do what we claim start from scratch. What does it mean? It means that we have to do it fundamentally, including the education for people, as well as the popularization of digital transformation of the, what we say, digital operations in Hong Kong, including not only for manufacturing industries, but also servicing sectors or logistics sector or different sectors. And that's why in the past, HKPC worked with different organizations to apply for different funding to assist Hong Kong enterprise to work towards what we say the term or the concept of Industry 4.0 that is initiated from Germany, that we hope companies would utilize their best resource to make sure that they go towards digital transformation. It means that they will do their operation into a more transparent, real-time, and more productivity.
So Hera, what are your thoughts on some of the more deeper issues that are stopping us? Obviously, especially in your space, you've seen so many people talk about digital transformation, AI, these technologies are so easy to say, right? Buzzwords, but what are your thoughts on Hong Kong's ability to adapt to those beyond the current challenges?
Right. So, I mean, I'll start by saying that Hong Kong is a highly competitive market. I mean, this is the price of talent and the war for talent is absolutely front and center. So companies over here, and they're constantly being measured on their top line and their bottom line, quarter by quarter, getting the right talent with the right skill set and getting the most out of your talent, which is the whole theme of productivity, is absolutely critical. And I think companies really need to be able to invest in building talent for the future. So not what they need today from the people, but what do they need tomorrow and the year after, and how do they start developing that today? So, you know, getting talent that knows how to, you know, that is highly digitized and can think in those ways with machine learning and AI and be creative and be innovative, because that's how you beat the competition.
And what about yourself, Cam? What are you seeing in terms of the underlying problems beyond the surface level problems in the legal sector?
In general, the legal sector in Hong Kong is quite conservative and very risk averse. So the main problem is the adaptation of technology in our industry. I'm not saying that all law firms or all lawyers are like that. There are exceptional lawyers who are taking on the technology and utilizing it that benefits their firm or benefits their business. But in general, we are constrained by our regulations. I'm the chairman for a working party that's trying to figure out how to allow lawyers to practice away from the brick and mortar of a law firm to even up to a virtual or even a business center or even their home office. And the main problem with that when we first looked at it is the regulations, is the laws. That's constraining how we do business as lawyers here in Hong Kong. We see other jurisdictions like in Australia, Singapore, UK, and they're already doing the things that we want to do. We're working on it, but it's a slow slog. And the other thing is that lawyers for small to medium-sized law firms, we're paper-based. Everything we look at is paper-based. We want to print it out and mark on it. We're not so keen on doing it digitally or virtually. Everything wants to be physical, and we're trying to slowly change that. As a law society, as a committee member of the NATEC, we're trying to change that. We're trying to bring us to the 21st century, as it were. It's difficult.
Fantastic. So I think there's multiple angles here, right? There's the need for companies to invest further in talent. As you pointed out, Sahara, there's the need for more tech talent, people who actually have those skills. There's a need for more companies to capture government grants. And then it seems like there's also a mindset need that kind of prevents traditional industries, at least from a regulation standpoint, to being open to change. One of the talking points that we really wanted to go into was, would we call these industries, you know, the four pillar industries of Hong Kong per the Hong Kong government, right? Our city is known as tourism, it's known as professional services, it's known as finance, and we're known as trading logistics, right? Of these four pillars, how many of them do you think are truly future proofed?
I mean, I'll speak to the trade side of it, right? I mean, because that's what I know. But from the trade point of view, I think this is the best opportunity again for Hong Kong. And let's talk about the macro scenarios. What is going to happen across the world? China is going to be. China is still going to be important for certain sectors, but China is not going to be that easily accessible for international audiences. People are not going to travel as often to China to do the trade. Chinese are not going to be traveling as often elsewhere to do their trade. It is also going to be difficult to get visas to China and for Chinese to get visas elsewhere. There are already talks about their long-term visas in some of the countries getting canceled or reduced. What that means for trade is that the Hong Kong people who have a superior passport, Hong Kong, which has open doors, and that was how Hong Kong grew, right? Hong Kong grew, the financial industry, the trade industry in Hong Kong grew because Hong Kong was the what do you call it, the corridor to China or the door to China, and people used it for that. If at this point of time we can relax furthermore, the only country we are in competition with for trade is Singapore, and we can beat them very, very easily and very fast. I'm very optimistic. I'm super optimistic that coronavirus is the best thing that can happen to Hong Kong.
Why do you say that?
Because this is when the doors and the opportunities open up, right? So from a trade perspective, we have the best port one of the best ports in the world. We have talent which has the trade background, that has trade understanding. There are trade lawyers, there's trade finance, there is everything related to trade. We have the entire infrastructure available. And we have China at our doorsteps, which we can have full access to, being a special administrative region. So we have open doors to the rest of the world, and we have open doors to China, which is not going to change. While it will change for China and the world, we are going to be the common factor which doesn't change. The world needs us to connect them to China, and China needs us to connect them to the world from a trade perspective. And that's why I'm optimistic.
Got it. Do any of the other panelists have thoughts on future-proofing the trade?
I just wanted to comment on Minesh's comments that the virus is the best things to happen to Hong Kong. In part, I think that is quite true. The reason is because we are not just legal industry, and all industries. Every company has been forced to use Zoom, to use work from home, to look at what we can do without actually going outside, and all these things we need technology to do that. To do that, and even the Law Society has been pushed to use technology for things like court appearances. You have video conferences in court for court cases, submission of electronic documents, things like that. So we're forced to do these things because of the virus, and we're going to come out of this, and I believe that we're not going to go back. We can't go back. There's no point going back. We're going to go forward, and this is a good kick up the arse, as it were.
What do you think, Horace?
Agree that the virus helped us to improve in terms of technology. So recently, as we can see, from our perspective, what we work with other companies, we will stop visiting their factories in China. Instead, we will use remote facility to help them to do some kinds of consultancy work or some kinds of advisory works. This is a little bit what we say, improve from the past. And what we see apart from that, in future, especially in terms of, if you look at Hong Kong logistics development, not just from the, not just because of the virus, but also when we focus on the technology in the coming era, we will see that nowadays e-commerce driven global economy is leading to a new age, which is what we say fourth industrial revolution. And what is our important point of view is business need to react quickly to avoid themselves being left behind by the competition. And for the logistics development, in Hong Kong, we have established the Logistics 4.0, the scheme, which is a part of Industry 4.0 that enable the logistics industry to make use of the latest technology for their works so that they would become transparent and become instant and can react quickly to their customers' demands. And that's very important.
Got it. Are you seeing a similar push, Sahara, in professional services across both financial services, but other professional services?
So I mean, I'll speak to the financial services because Hong Kong has always been known as the hub for banking, insurance, and there's also luxury goods and the whole tourism angle. I mean, I think companies are really challenging and looking at their business models and their cost structures right now. You have to, at a time like this, I mean, you have to look at your supply chain and de-risk it and diversify it. You can't have it all in a single country in China because that would completely expose you. But Hong Kong has resilience, and it's a country, it powers through, it works through this crisis. We never stopped working. And I think that's what you get in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has agility and they know how to adapt. They've been through this, and there's no better place to be when you're going through a crisis like this than a place like Hong Kong that knows how to reinvent itself. But when you look at your business models and your cost structures, you are going to challenge the bricks and mortar strategy. Do companies really need that real estate? Can you go into flex work? Can you do split teams? Can you have half your people coming to the office at any given time? So you are going to challenge those sorts of things.
Got it. Okay, so I think just to wrap up in the first part, I think some of the main things are there's a huge problem in tech talent, there's a huge problem in mindset, there's a huge problem in the ability for companies to capture that last mile of productivity. And that problem is something, especially with the education system, that affects all traditional industries. Right. And I think we are seeing that the virus has really been a catalyst for us to become as digital as possible. So kind of going to the second part, right? And this is where we can get a little more sector specific. And maybe Minesh, we can start with you. How do you see some of the disruptive technologies, and it's very easy to say AI and all, but if you can go on some concrete case studies, how do you see disruptive technologies helping shape on the ground things like trade and supply chains?
So one of the points I had mentioned is the disruption to the supply chain, right? What disruption means? Let's talk about practically what does disruption mean. So today there was a certain, let's say you were a retailer in U.S. markets, and you were retailing electronic goods or any of the consumer goods. You were pretty much 90% dependent on China, right? Now what is going to happen is that dependence is going to change to other markets. That dependence moved from Japan to Korea to Taiwan to Hong Kong and then to China. And that happened over a period of probably 25, 30 years that move completely happened. The next move is going to be to the new horizons, as I call it, which are, for example, Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia, India, Thailand, all these other places that can take advantage of that disruption from after the coronavirus phase. Hong Kong is in a very interesting place to be because Hong Kong has the talent that has understanding of the trade. Can technology be used in this talent? If we use technology in combination with the talent that we have in Hong Kong, it can accelerate the role of Hong Kong as a regional capital, not just a corridor to Hong Kong, but a corridor to the Southeast Asia, because you already have set up industries. So for example, let's take a simple example of say the electronics industry, manufacturing sector. Okay, there are certain things that the skill sets are required that are in Hong Kong, and the people have those skill sets. And I think Sarah will talk about skill sets more, but I'll say that these are the people, this is the core competence of these people. It doesn't come easy. You need to have been in the field. You have to have burnt your hands. You have to have experience it, have done it. And Hong Kong has that. If those people are able to use technological solutions, Zoom is an example, but there is far more superior technological solutions where they don't have to be physically in Vietnam, they don't have to be physically in Myanmar, but still are able to control the production, are still able to build in probably in-house ERP tools to control their supply chains. Or if there are people coming out from Accelerate who can build those supply chain solutions, customized supply chain solutions for those people in Hong Kong to control that supply chain, there is a tremendous opportunity that I can foresee for Hong Kong as the capital of Southeast Asia, using technology and the manpower that we have.
Mm.
And I can supplement with Minesh that when we take a look at the what we say disruptive technology, what we see so far is if we apply different technology to the industry, such as to the logistics industry, we will see that most of the people will ask what equipment or what new softwares or hardwares that we need to install so that we will jump into the technology things. However, from our viewpoint would be, we have to make it the usage of technology step by step. What does it mean? It means that, first of all, we have to understand ourselves. What is our frame condition? That is the fundamental thing. Understand our condition. And then we have to make use of our current condition. That is, we have make ourselves enable to do some data collection. So we can move one step forward to what we said another level, that is real-time data generation. And then we move a step forward to step 2, it is real-time data processing and integration. And we move forward to integration of cyber physical system. And then we move further forward to intelligent autonomous process or self-organizing system. That's the way towards what we think about. We need to manage the technology stepwise, step by step, for what we have set in this 4 level, from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that 4 level. Okay.
Sarah, do you want to add on the skill sets?
Yeah. So in terms of skills that people need to have, so I'm looking at future-proofing skills. This was some advice given to my daughter who graduated a year ago from college. And she got this email that said, if you don't know how to code, sell, or write, you're either going to be paid on an hourly rate or you're going to be working by the hour, working on an hourly wage. And it's an interesting concept. And I'll actually add a 4th skill set, knowing how to communicate, knowing how to speak and do some public speaking. I think these are critical skills that people need to build. So these are your soft skills. I think the other thing that people need to build is networks. And this is an invaluable thing, knowing how to tap and nurture a network, because that is gold. That is what that helps you later on and differentiates you and throughout a career. But also taking risks in your career. Like I think we all did in our introductions have changed our careers at least twice, if not thrice. And when you take those risks and you go into an unknown space, you bring everything you know to the table, and you bring very high learning agility and the ability to learn very fast everything you need to know about the new job and be successful in it. So I would say it's all those skills and just someone that has a sort of a growth and a learning mindset.
I think maybe you're muted.
Yeah, okay, hi. Yeah, that's really interesting. So Sahar, when you think about those soft skills, how do you relate those in terms of some of the technical skills that are necessary to kind of follow through some of the trends that Horace and Minesh were saying right? The need to use technology to adapt and increase productivity. Of course, the soft skills and the risk is very important, but how do you see the relative prioritization or lack thereof of companies, but also people learning those skills?
Right. So I think learning those digital skills is going to become bread and butter. I mean, companies need to create that sort of digital offering within their curriculum, in their learning curriculums. And it'll be different by industry sector, but you know, the people that and the companies that allow people to sort of learn the skills and manage their own career. So you say, look, this is where your career could go in the future if you do this. So it's creating that sort of ownership of your career and giving them the roadmap along the way. And I think the digital is going to be a plain vanilla sort of option now for all companies, just differentiated by industry sectors.
Got it. Cam, what about your thoughts in terms of future-proofing the legal sector? You know, how do you see the role of digital skills contribute, and of course, people transformation contribute to possibly overcoming some of the hurdles of regulation?
As I said before, the legal sector is quite conservative in general, but from what I see, we as lawyers, we have to progress, we have to improve ourselves to obtain benefit from the technology. For example, I see a lot of technology related to big data, able to have lots of data, but search through it, analyze it, and get your results. This is all well and good, but the person who has to set up a scope, set up a filter, understand what kind of data there is, how to get those data that you want, how to interpret that data, that's really important. Because if you don't know what to search for, you're not going to get the right answers. One example is that I read recently is there are systems out there, especially in America, where they collated lots of judgments, court judgments for litigation cases, and able to sort that out and map it to your own case and say, oh, am I going to win as a plaintiff? Am I going to win as a defendant? What is this judge going to rule? Is it going to rule against me in this case or rule for me? What are my chances of getting this damage? These different types of specific questions that you may have. For a lawyer to do that, they may need to have hands-on on the application to be able to sort out that question, sort out what you want, and when you get the results, actually interpret those results for your benefit. So I think as a lawyer, you may not need to go into the specific coding or very technical, but you do actually need to know what you want in a language that may not be as natural as you want it to be, like in a science fiction movie. They go, give me this, and they interpret it. I don't think that's going to happen very soon, but you still need to have a way of interpreting your requests to the computer, to the system.
Got it. So how do you all see, I guess the question that's really interesting to hear from all of you, all four of you represent different industries. How do you view at status quo the current digital literacy of your industries?
Limited. It's a limitation on the industry, right? Because if you see the traditional trade industry, except pretty much logistics, which has improved a little bit, but traditional manufacturing, traditional trading has still a long way to go. If you look at okay, let's look at the larger number of trading houses that Hong Kong hosts and the technologies that are used by them. They still are far behind. Like I was saying, because ERPs or CRMs were not that accessible, or they have not really graduated to that level yet, right? Controlling the supply chain, having the transparency of the supply chain was never that much of, not given that much of an importance, except for the big guys like the Li Fengs and William Econos and Li Feng, and they might have their CRMs and ERPs. But the smaller guys who make up for most of the business, which is 80% of them, are small guys, medium small guys. They have not really implemented technologies. They have not really done the digital transformation of their organizations. And it's not just those owned by really old people. This is like people where the owners or the businessmen are in their 30s and 40s. And if there is something, incentive schemes, programs, or a drive from the government which can accelerate their transformation, which can accelerate them having more of that information, it will really help them. Somebody was asking a question on that group chat about how does it matter for Hong Kong if the factories move to the ASEAN countries. And that's where, if we have people who have information or transparency into the supply chain in the ASEAN because of a ERP implementation, because of it doesn't have to be a full-fledged ERP, but one for their own supply chain, then they would have far more control over their entire movement of the supply chain from China to the rest of the world. And that's how you can make Hong Kong important in that sector, because Hong Kong has the people that have the relationships with the clients all over the world. Hong Kong is a place that is trusted to be a trade capital of the world. Hong Kong is a place where transactions can happen. So for example, if you want to pay money into China, it's not that easy. Your money can get stuck if something goes wrong. Same thing in Vietnam, same thing in India. You can put the money into those countries. Same thing in Bangladesh, same thing in Myanmar. But if you put your money into Hong Kong, the transactions can happen much quickly. So these factors of the infrastructure that Hong Kong has, along with the people's skills that they have and the people's understanding, because people have been doing trade in Hong Kong for the last 25, 30 years, people really know, people like your dad really know the trade, Lavi. People like your dad who have done that for their lives, these are skills not the people today are going to learn again. And these are skills not available in those countries that these industries will move to.
Got it. Horace, are you seeing a trend ever since the government has announced initiatives like ESS, TVP, reindustrialization scheme, RTTMP, basically to bring more traditional industries like manufacturing, trade, professional services, large and small? Are you seeing that there is more push from these industries and large companies and small companies to take advantage of technology skills and future upskilling?
Sorry, I just muted it. Okay. So in terms of support from the Hong Kong government, we can see that there are many different fundings or schemes that help the companies to engage different technology. Before we comment whether this technology would help them, I would say, first of all, we say no matter big company or SMEs, they have to think about and see clearly what is their current status on applying technology. Below is the 5 important wordings that we need to remember. First of all, we have to identify whether they can use data to get connected with others. That is connectivity, the first point. Second point is whether their data could be visible to others. And the third point is whether their operation would be transparent to other operation. It means that they can do some diagnostic and analytic with other companies. And the fourth level would be, do they got the level of ability to predict? That is the predictive ability. And the fifth one is self-organizing ability. In terms of these 5 status, if they can digest themselves and diagnose themselves clearly, they will know what they need to do in the next phase. And then they can utilize the fundings that what you mentioned, Naveen, what you mentioned about what the government can help us. Because the government will not tell us what level currently we are at, but the company itself need to identify their current status, in which what we see currently in Hong Kong, most of no matter factories or the logistics industry, they would be at the very preliminary level on using data technology or data analytics. So they may be at the level of connectivity or visibility only. They don't have not much ability on transparency or predictability or self-organizing. That is what we see at the current moment.
Mm-hmm. How do you see that trend, Sahar, from a HR standpoint, right? When you're having conversations with C-suite, when you're having conversations with frontline managers, as well as the actual technology team, how do you as a larger organization see the need to incorporate AI technologies and the self-awareness required to assess your maturity?
Yeah. I think, you know, in the consulting world where I am now, you have to be tech savvy by default. You are creating solutions for clients across industries. But I'd say that, you know, it's an evolving, it's an evolutionary state. So all consulting firms know how to work remotely. They all know how to flex. So, you know, when everything happened in Hong Kong in February, everybody knows how to sort of work from home, and work just continues. One of the things that Mercer's done across their 3 pillars, so they have health, wealth, and career verticals. They've created some innovative solutions in our wealth vertical, where you've got an outsourced CIO model, where you have a system that sort of helps manage money for asset management industries. And those are the sorts of things that consulting firms have to do to differentiate themselves. And that brings in a different kind of income stream, because it's annuity income, it's sticky money. Rather than just, you know, one-off projects. So I think consulting firms are evolving with this. They have to, because they are the solution providers to the industries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what level of maturity do you find consulting firms are when you look at Horace's framework, right? Data aware, data guided, or starting to use things like recommendation engines in sort of manufacturing zones, right? That's happening right now in manufacturing and supply chain, but what about in consulting services?
I'd say they would be, so I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but I'd say they're beyond data aware. So what's the next level up? So they'd be data guided. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
but there is obviously room to grow. There is always room to grow. And I think we need to keep, you know, evolving. I mean, you can see what's happened in the last couple of months means a lot of the things we used to do were irrelevant. And we have to come out of this thinking and looking differently at digital skills.
Got it. Well, on the topic of relevancy, one of the questions from an audience member called Ritter to all panelists is, doesn't future proofing include looking at existing industries or business sectors which may not have a future in Hong Kong? So I guess to all of you here, do you think as a city, we're trying to reinvent the city, should we spend more efforts on future proofing existing industries, or spend more time on future proofing new industries?
Well, I think we should certainly strengthen the core industries that Hong Kong is known for. I mean, you know, and we are going to be disrupted on tourism for a while. We are going to be disrupted on luxury goods and you know, banks and insurance companies that haven't digitized. You know, they all have digital as part of their strategy, but how digital are they, and where are they on that life cycle? Yeah, I think there's always room for new, but you strengthen your core, you strengthen your base, and then you add the new to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you, Sarah, more. And people forget that that's why I keep coming back to the core strengths of Hong Kong and core strengths as it relates to trading and the skill sets that people have, because those cannot be taught that easily. It only comes from experience. The skill sets of technology, you can do like what Laveen is doing at Accelerate, teaching adults with these skill sets or giving them new tools. Could be I mean, Laveen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but basically you're sitting here with Horace, have Horace sponsor a program to educate a whole set of trading companies to use new technologies, and HKPC should take up that initiative and invest in Accelerate to make that happen.
Sure. So one very, very interesting question from another audience member is precisely on that topic, is from John Renkin. You've mentioned a need for growth-driven learning mindset, and all panelists have probably agreed that now is the time to come up with new business models and business opportunities, especially because we do have resilient and skilled talent. But I think I speak on behalf of every one of the 7 million people in Hong Kong when I say, where is the time, right? So who, you know, from HR, from startup perspective, how do we find the time to develop this? Especially because it is so important, but it's so easy to say, where's the time?
Yeah. So I'm going to give it a try. So new business models are going to be absolutely top of mind for everybody. So, and I feel very strongly about this because every single company is looking internally at their business model and they're saying, how can we create a more variable cost model versus a fixed cost model? You know, how do we do that? And which roles in our company can be outsourced and which ones should we always keep within the company? Now, when you think about which roles you should outsource, you think about like those commoditized roles, the roles that are furthest away from the client, sort of the roles that do your data. But you can never outsource judgment and problem solving and making decisions because that's a leadership responsibility and a leadership role. So the roles you'll never outsource are your leadership pipeline roles that take you all the way up from a graduate hire to a CEO. And it's functional roles, business roles, because companies that know how to do this well have a broad leadership pipeline, and they will create functional leaders who can become business leaders and business leaders who can become functional leaders and cross-pollinate talent. So I'm sort of answering a few things at the same time, but business models are being evaluated. The other thing that companies are going to look at is this whole concept of flexible talent models. So, you know, there are companies out there that you know, you can sort of second talent from. For example, there's a company called Axiom where you can second lawyers on an as-need basis, and they look and feel like they're part of your company, but your contract is with the company, not the individual. So those are the things that companies will say, well, why don't I do more of that? So, you know, when the business is sort of challenged, I can dial that down easily.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty much my business model, right? What BuyHive is doing is basically providing on-demand sourcing professionals who have done sourcing for other companies and they want to be flexible. And that's exactly what we built. We built a platform to provide those guys employment, and large retailers and medium-sized retailers, no headcounts. We reduced that headcount because finding a factory, getting the information from the factories, etc., can be outsourced. You want to buy, making the buying decision, you should stay with you. Who does the buying? That should stay with you. But to discover them, to qualify them, to verify them, all that can be outsourced. There are a ton of solutions now coming out, even for audits of factories or in the legal industry, for example. I would talk to Cam's field, but there are certain tasks that can be outsourced. Certain associates can be done virtually. Certain work that the associates do, or what he was talking about of use of technology to give predictions based on previous cases or previous verdicts. All that information can be put in data sets and give you a predictive analysis very, very quickly and make the decision making very fast with less manpower at hand.
Got it.
I agree with Manesh. For legal sector, it's for the current generation of lawyers, where especially the partner level, those levels of they were probably lagging behind in technology wise. The ones that are coming up now, especially the people who's becoming lawyers now, they're grown up. They've been born in that generation where everyone's using iPads, everyone knows about Google. While my generation, we didn't have Google then. Everything had to be an encyclopedia. Go to the library and search for it. So now it's different. I think as the generation grows up, as the people filter up to the senior roles in the legal sector, we'll get these people, these talents who are lawyers, as well as very familiar with technology and how to use them and how to implement them and how to execute them within their law firm. I think that's where our talent is coming from the younger generation who's naturally tech savvy.
Got it. But I guess for all generations, right, there is still a need to learn. How do we find time, you know, from an HR perspective, from a startup perspective, and Horace, maybe from productivity council perspective? These things are important, but it's so easy, especially in a financial crisis, to cut L&D budget, to cut talent retention and talent development budget, right? That's the easiest one. That's the one that goes away immediately. So where do we find the time and the attention to have the knowledge to get the new business models and future-proof ourselves while we're so busy trying to fight the current fires by our existing sort of future-centric business model?
Let me put it this way. We do different consultancy work with the companies in Hong Kong or in the Greater Bay Area. We always talk to the boards of the companies and ask them, what is your budget on growing the talents, especially the youth, that you think they are the potential, the stars in the future? Most of the boss or the decision maker would give us an indication that for the investment they would they will focus on, first of all, are they putting on the right portion or the right token for the best option? What is the best option to them would be, are they investing their strength at the strongest point? If that's the case, they will do this investment. In this extent to the people that believe that they are talents, they have to think about, they have to grow up their strongest point and they have to hide away their weakest link. And in this connection, when we do the investigation or when we do the diagnosis to the companies in Hong Kong or in the Greater Bay Area, we always investigate whether they got the talents on four things. One is, are they talents at data or using sensors, using network, or using human machine interface? That's four indicators would be important for a company to grow up a sensible business model in the future. And do they got suitable talent to master these four items: data, sensor, network, human machine interface? It will be very, very important.
Cam, how do you feel about lawyers? They're billed per an hour, so for every hour that they are not being billed out and they're spending time learning, that's opportunity cost to this sort of immediate short-term P&L, which partners and C-suite of law firms, big and small, are judiciously watching. So how do you think about the necessity to try and create time, attention, and resources versus the inherent sort of incentive to move away from that, right?
I think that's the age-old problem for any kind of company. How do you convince your boss that they should invest in the person, invest in time, so that you can gain in the future? So the gain in the future is what you're going to convince your boss with. So if you can convince your boss that investing in talent, spending this amount of time for this training to future-proof your industry, your business, and that you can show a clear link that you will gain the benefits in the future, or you're very persuasive, then I think that's the only way to go about it. Because legal sector, they're just busy getting to the papers and working their ass off. If you can't convince them that spending an hour in time a week for your personnel to learn new tech that would improve your firm as a whole, then it's a lost cause.
Sahir, how do you view that? I mean, for an enterprise, you're so closely monitoring the ability for the enterprise as a whole to upskill so that future consultants and future business models can be built. But how do you view that sort of trade-off on doing that while it's not compromising the day-to-day operating responsibilities, which are, ever time-consuming?
Absolutely. So I think, the companies that know how to do this right, know how to sort of do their immediate sort of tasks, block and tackle the day-to-day, building the future. That needs to happen whether the market is up or down. Companies that don't have a learning strategy and don't invest in it are going to be completely exposed at a time like this. Now think about it. You don't have talent pipelines. You don't have emergency succession. Something happens to your leaders. Where do you go? this is when you test your emergency succession, your skill capability, and you know, if the business isn't coming in, this is the time when you tell your talent to do the learning. A lot of the learning is online. It can be done at your own convenience. It can be done, you know, it's done in a scalable way, in a cost-effective way. It can continue, and companies will and should keep that money going on the side to keep investing for the future.
How do you think, from a sort of perspective of someone who's learning these skills, if the company they're at does not want to invest in them, should they be doing it themselves? Should they, you know, what does one do if your boss is not willing to invest in you, or says, you know what, business is down? And again, you know, cost benefit analysis.
Yeah. I would challenge the status quo. I would, you know, sort of raise your voice at the company, and you know, and find another way to upskill yourself. Like, if not, I would do it out of my own pocket. If my company wasn't paying for me, I would do it, because I think the more you invest in your skill set, you monetize it later. You can cash it out. I mean, it is the best investment you make in yourself. But companies know that this is what they should be investing in. They're just going to be a little more prudent on costs and how to do it in a cost way.
Horace, what are the trends you're seeing in the desire for individuals and companies to do trainings, right? In supply chain, in, you know, manufacturing, predictive maintenance. Do you see that most of these managers, execs are going into learning technical skills like Python, or they're going into analytics? What are the trends? What do you see them learning, and what do you see them not learning but should learn?
Okay, as what we observe in the past 2 or 3 years, we understand that the industry, or what we say it for the manufacturing industries or the servicing industry, they are really new to apply knowledge on doing the data analytics. So first of all, in 2 or 3 years ago, we find that they need to know the basic information or basic knowledge about data analytics. That is what we name it as for the descriptive analytics. In recent year, in this year or 201, start from 2019, we observed that some of the factories or some of the organizations, they had set up their platform on accumulating information, so that they will make use of this information to do some, what we say, diagnostic analytics. In this extent, they have to learn about the technology, how to do the simple data analytics. And what we predict in future or at this moment, okay, what we need to start working on would be we do some predictive analytics. That is, we have to build up some kinds of what we say models to do the decentralized decision-making models to help doing the predictive, what we say, predictive maintenance or predictive sales analysis, predictive customer service, etc. And in future, we have to adopt the prescriptive analytics. It's about self-optimizing process and autonomous control. But I think this will be some years later. And that's the trend. Yeah, the past, current, and future.
Naveen.
Yep.
I just want to add that in the legal sector, there's slightly different. When we talk about time, we have a continuous professional development that if you're a practicing lawyer, you have to spend 15 hours a year doing. So those 15 hours of a year that we are mandatorily, we must do, that can be utilized to learn new technology if it's related to legal skills. So there are criteria, but 15 hours a year is something that the legal sector can actually utilize for that. And our committee, the InnoTech committee, we try to provide these CPD points for technology-related courses, and hopefully that would upskill them somewhat, or actually start them on the journey.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Lavin, the issue here is not depending on your company, not depending on the government to do this for you. You're learning things, your skill sets, not just getting a promotion of job. If you're thinking only from that, you're thinking very short term. What you should be thinking about is the skill set. Every person today in today's world, especially as we go into a global depression, pretty much, should be thinking of how he or she is going to survive and grow in for themselves and for their families. So if you really need to, if I as an individual, I'm sitting at home, I have far more, I save 2 hours of my commute. Why can't I use that for training? Why can't I use that for learning something new, which may or may not help me here, but maybe something in the areas of my passion. So let's say I'm passionate about machine learning. Can I do a small course? There are, I mean, of course there is Accelerate, but there is all kinds of free courses available, even from the likes of Harvard, Stanford, and others, which you can take online. There is no need, there is no excuse anymore for people to say, oh, how can I learn a new skill set?
Yeah. So why do we have such a non-future-proof audience? If there is not audience, I mean, the whole city really is not really that future-proof.
No, but that's the play that's the part that government can do, which is tell them, prepare yourself for the unpredictable future, make yourself future-proof, understand the availability. So if there are, maybe there is a government education, adult education program that needs to be taken place. It relates me back to, I don't know, I mean, you didn't grow up in India, I grew up in India. So in India, there was a big drive to educate adults. They used to have night schools, they used to have all these, so that the adult population gets literate, they can read and write and speak. But it's the same thing today. The read and write and speak has now become technology education. Basic technology educations for adults should be made compulsory, or should be a factor of growth. So if Hong Kong can take a lead and say, we are going to target 99% of our population will be technology literate, and what are the steps we take towards that? It is not that they have to subsidize courses for people. What they have to do is to make the availabilities there and make it as easy for people to take them, and incentivize organizations that make sure that happens too. So there are ways in which government can play a role, but I give it to the individuals that they should do it themselves. Governments, corporates, all those can play a role, but this is the role of the individual.
Has to come from within. Okay,
Yes.
so to all the audience members out there, I invite you to start writing some of your questions. I have one final question from my side for the panelists, and in a couple of minutes, I'd be happy to open it up to some of the questions that have come from the audience. So my final question to you all is, what is the call to action, right? What is the call to action to CEOs, to HR leaders, to founders, to startups, to the Hong Kong person, right? All of us here in this live stream, we all want to see Hong Kong come out stronger, right? This is our home, this is our community. And it really hurts, I'm sure, for everyone to see those months of political turmoil, as well as the virus, to hurt so many industries. But with crisis, with challenge, there comes new opportunities. There comes a mindset to see how the phoenix can rise from the ashes. So what are your sort of calls to action to various stakeholders, governments and enterprises, about making Hong Kong better?
Well, I'll start by saying, CEOs have the toughest job today. I mean, today it's not about what you have to do, it's about who you are and what you stand for. I mean, this is when your values are put to the test. And everybody's watching. Guess what? Everybody's listening to what you're doing, and everyone's watching. And reputations are made and destroyed in a day. So it's about what you did as a company and what that meant, for in terms of what you stand for. So it's beyond sort of doing the scenario planning and rapid testing and stress testing your P&L. And you've got to do all that. You've got to do your contingency planning. You've got to keep your colleagues safe and healthy, stay close to your customers. But it's really going to be about that defining moment of your values. That's going to set you apart as a CEO. And as someone who's in the HR leadership profession, as chief HR officer, I would say that if the global financial crisis in 2008 was a time when boardrooms turned towards CFOs and a good CFO saved a company, today it's your CHRO that can really help. They're front and center. I mean, this is the time when because this is a people-based crisis. People are falling sick and it's throwing businesses and governments in a complete tailspin. So you need to, as a business savvy CHRO, you've got to keep your colleagues healthy, their emotional and mental well-being, their professional development, all that. You've got to look at business health. Help your CEO do all the scenario planning on ways to keep liquidity and cash flow, because that's going to help you and help you survive. Then it's about managing your talent gaps, because companies are not hiring right now. So you have to look at demand and supply within your company and match that and get people leveraged from one business to another, from areas of low demand to high demand, which can create an opportunity for people because they learn new skills in the process. And you've got to keep building for the future. You've got to keep doing your talent development plans. You've got to keep doing your high potential plans, which I'm working on, and keep your talent and succession slates going, because that's going to help you survive in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks for those call to action, Sahir. Very, very insightful.
One
Horace.
more. Yeah, one more.
Yeah, what are your calls to action?
I would say in terms of the decision maker, they have to take a look at what digitization could help their companies to do better in the future. For example, instead of what Sierra mentioned, Chief HR Officer, I would say Chief Digital Officer would be very important in this age. So we have to make use of the appropriate digital technology to enable the companies to move a step forward. For example, what HKBC would help in future, just take an example relating to the logistics industry. We will have to work with the Hong Kong Shippers Council to implement the concept to deploy Industry 4.0 in the terms of logistics 4.0 in Hong Kong. So in coming future, very soon, we will have different international conference or seminars, which will be free of charge or just charge for a very few money, that enable industry practitioner to learn the latest technology all over the world. We'll invite different speakers all over the world to Hong Kong, I think, after this pandemic moment, okay? So we will have the latest technology shared in Hong Kong, and people in Hong Kong will utilize the latest technology in future for Hong Kong logistics industry. Yeah, we have to stay tuned with this. Okay.
Got it. And quick reminder to audience members, feel free to write in the chat as we wrap up with this final section, any questions that have come to your mind. Minesh, Cam, over to you.
I just want to wrap up saying that what I said earlier, I see it as a big opportunity for Hong Kong and for the individuals in Hong Kong. Those guys that rise to the challenge, those guys that take the challenge and train themselves, take the risk of doing something for the changes that are coming along, will actually have success. Those who don't are going to be depressed themselves, and they are not going to have growth. So it is up to all the individuals in Hong Kong that at least those guys on this call take this opportunity. This is the biggest opportunity you'll get in your lives. This is the opportunity that your forefathers or our forefathers got after World War II. Some of them got them and they got really successful. The others did not. So this is that moment for us. This is really the turning point. Take advantage of it.
Fantastic. Cam?
I agree with Minesh. I think this is a really good opportunity for the legal sector to really look within themselves, especially these small and medium-sized firms, look at themselves and say, what are we doing wrong now? What can we do to improve ourselves in the future? Could we, because of this virus, can we let employees work at home? If we can't, why not? Because we're lacking in some kind of we're lacking in remote technology. Are we too paper-based? Could we move on to more digital-based work? These are the questions they should ask themselves. I think this is a really good opportunity for legal sector to improve law. And I think the Law Society itself, our committee, in the tech committee, is there to help them push along.
Okay, great. Well, on behalf of the organizing company, Accelerate, for this panel. It gives me a lot of pleasure to conclude the first part of our panel. Again, all those attendees right now who are listening, please feel free to ask your questions right now. And we have 15 minutes left for Q&A with the panelists. If there's none that come to mind immediately, I think one that I also had, which I forgot to ask earlier, is what about some of the jobs that become redundant, right? So we want to future-proof the industry, but are there in your industries certain jobs that will become completely irrelevant? And so those are the people that should really be thinking the most about future skilling, aka immediately.
Yeah, in the legal sector, I think that there are quite a number of jobs that could go obsolete. Things that are very mundane, very regulatory, by the book, 1, 2, 3. These are the jobs that I don't think will survive. Things like company secretarial, things that you need to file, very mundane things, admin things that you still have to do as a lawyer for companies. But it's so simple that a simple program could probably do that. You don't need much decision process. So these are the jobs that I think will go. And the people who's doing them now will have to improve and look at other things that they can do to contribute to the firm.
Mm-hmm. Sahir, any thoughts on some of the jobs that are, or job functions that are most at risk as the industry as a whole needs to future-proof?
I think any of those areas that are sort of very sort of data sort of centric, and you can outsource a data sort of a function, anything that's commoditized, you know, just it can be outsourced. So it's really about the roles that will stay where you need people to make good decisions and do problem solving, and your leadership roles, your leadership pipeline roles, that must stay. But yeah, I think it's a time for people to really start upskilling. And I think if you can learn how to sell, you can learn how to code, you can learn how to write, you can learn how to talk, you will always be in demand.
Yeah.
Learn those skills.
Yeah. And I add to what Sarah is saying. Basically, I see it one more angle of it, which is anything that requires people-to-people interaction is what is going to be always there. No matter how much technology develops, we are all human beings, and human beings need to interact with other human beings. So learn how to do that. Hong Kong people spend more time in their phones than interacting with others. So I think that is a skill to learn.
Right.
And I also think that what we think about would be, I always think about a sentence. If we want what we lost, we better think what we gained. Think about 100 years ago, do we got the job about in information technology, IT? I think not many, right? Okay, 100 before, not many IT related jobs. So currently, there are many IT related jobs, right? So in the future, if you think about digital transformation, we will create more and more jobs related to digital transformation. That's why I mentioned about Chief Digital Officer. This is a new term, maybe currently we listen to this, but I'm sure that in 10 years later, it would be common for us to have the job on Chief Digital Officer or the Key Digital Officer among different factories or different organizations. That's what we gain in the future. Okay.
Got it. Okay, we have a question from Brooklyn to all panelists. Brooklyn asks, in the corporate finance perspective, what are the major difficulties that corporates are facing? Which is a very interesting question. I started my career in corporate finance in New York and in Hong Kong, investment banking, mergers and acquisitions. That is typically the sort of central financial hub in Asia. So Sahir, any thoughts on that particular function and their challenges?
So when you say corporate finance, we're talking about like sort of investment banking?
Investment banking, M&A, global markets. You know, Hong Kong is typically the financial capital of Asia, but
right.
Any thoughts on that?
I think what this is going to do is it's going to create more consolidation within the industry, and there's going to be M&A. So there's going to be M&A work, transformation work, you know, that'll come out of this. So, you know, you are going to get those sorts of opportunities. There is going to be a different way that you interact with clients. right now. So I think you're going to have to find different ways to stay connected and help them solve their problems. But the deals will come. I think if you stay close to them, the clients, I would see a lot of M&A and consolidation coming out of this particular pandemic.
Yeah. Those guys that have kept their cash close to them are going to start buying stuff that they're not.
That's right. That's right. Cash is king right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I just think that this is the best time for those guys that have saved any cash, or companies, corporates that have kept cash reserves, because a lot of them are over leveraged. A lot of companies were over leveraged, especially in the startup world. As you know, people raised all the money and spent all the money as well, which I've talked to Laveen before about. But those guys are not going to survive. But those guys that are smart and that were watching their money and keeping the cash flows are going to be able to buy some of those, because there are good talent and good technology available for cheap.
Got it. Fantastic.
And
it seems, go for it.
No, I was going to add that, one thing that caught my attention, they're known as the beach stocks. This is your booking, businesses, your entertainment, airlines, cruises, hotels. These industries have lost over $330 billion in market cap between the end of February to the end of March.
Wow.
That's wiped out, right? From the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange.
Airbnb.
Right. All of those.
Yep.
So all this is going at a discount.
Yep.
Okay. It seems like we don't have too many questions from the audience today. So I'll just ask one final question and then we'll wrap up. Future proofing is such a general term. AI is such a general term. So to each of you four panelists today, thank you again for your time. But what does future proofing really mean to all of you?
If you ask me, there is no absolute future proofing. It is a dynamic world. Keep changing, keep adapting, using technologies to adapt. Because we saw one coronavirus, but I predict that there's going to be far more disruptions and in much shorter intervals coming forward. And we got to be always alert and always adapting to those. If you really want to stay competitive, whether you're a businessman or you are working for a job, you will have to keep adapting.
Fantastic.
For me, future proofing. Sorry, you go ahead, Ken.
My idea is that future proofing is continue learning, as Minesh is saying, and also making sure that you keep your job, making sure that your company survives. That's future proofing. If your company doesn't survive because if you're like the Kodak company and digital camera comes in and you die, that's not future proofing. You have to adapt. You have to learn.
Sahar,
Yeah.
What does future proofing mean to you?
Future proofing means, for me, it means taking risks, because I've taken a lot of them in my career, and it's never saying never, just taking that plunge. So you think you start your career as a corporate banker, which is what I did. And then I took a risk and moved into an HR leadership role. And then I crossed 5 industries. And what you do is you learn every single time. Your learning agility is vertical. And you never become irrelevant because you kept taking those risks and learning and growing.
Fantastic. Horace, what does future proofing mean to you?
I would say that future proofing means that we have to make ourselves ready to any data analytic in future. We cannot make 100% correct decision always, and we will not make 100% incorrect decision always. So what we can assure ourselves would be we do things consistently. We base on the data analytic to do the best estimation of the decision at the moment we get the correct information. We will make use of the latest technology to try our best to do the best estimation for the decision we make. And that's what we can consistently make. And that's what we mean by future proofing.
Excellent. Great. So I want to thank you all again. If I could, I'd do like a virtual thank you so much to all the panelists. This was a really, really fun conversation. To all of the audience members out there, I'm sure all the panelists would be happy to have you ask any questions. You can reach out to them in the future. You can reach out to Accelerate as well, and we'd be happy to connect you to the panelists. We are going to be hosting this once a month. So This was our first kickoff event, and I thought it was very successful. We'll be doing the next one starting the 15th of May. So it'll be once a month in the middle of the month, and it will have a focus on a particular industry. Today, we looked at the 4 pillar industries. Next month, I believe we'll be looking at either healthcare or education in much greater detail. And then there will be themes. So look out for the panelists. We'll be doing supply chain, manufacturing, consulting, and professional services throughout the year, and try and focus more on the practical tips and advice that we can pass to the audience members on these areas of opportunity. With that in mind, thank you again. A copy of this will be recorded and hosted on the Accelerate site, and we'll also email all the audience members that recording, as well as a summary of today's practical tips and tricks. So thank you again for your time. I hope you all have a very, very lovely evening. I hope all audience members and the panelists stay safe and stay strong. And I think we've realized that future-proofing really comes down to one thing. It's about taking challenge and crisis and making it into opportunity. So I wish you all the best in your businesses and your careers. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Everybody should keep accelerating. See ya.
I like that. I like that.
Keep
Bye.
accelerating. Future proofing means accelerating. Thank you all. I'll be wrapping up this meeting on Zoom right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.